Good evening, everyone. We're so glad to see you again. I cannot believe it. Let me get rid of this stuff that's, well, okay. Hold on a minute. All right, there we go. Okay, Liz, are you here?
No.
Yes, I'm here. I was on the phone with someone who was having trouble getting the password.
All right. Well,
So-
I'm going to start by saying good evening and greeting everyone that is here. So wonderful to have you. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. We're starting, I think, our 20-something swap. And it's just such a great pleasure to be here and contemplate this wonderful evening together. Let's see, I'm looking forward to every month and to all of our meetings. And I think I'll just turn it over to Liz and let us begin.
Okay. Hi, everyone. We have a great lineup of tellers tonight. Before I start introducing them, I just also wanted to say thank you to the Storytelling Association of California for being our Zoom host. Thank you, Shags, for everything you do and for being here tonight. And thank SAC also for the opportunity for us and other swaps to be part of the wonderful genre story series that has been going now. It's in its second year, I guess. And Lance McVeigh, who's we've had as our featured teller. He represented us at the last Tall Tales one, and we're still looking for somebody to represent us at the February one, which will be on romantic stories. And then Renu, who's going to be telling a story tonight, Renu Narayan, will represent us at the March genre on myths and legends, I believe it is. So that's another wonderful event that I know some of you have been coming to, and I just encourage everyone. I think it's free if you're a SAC member, and it's very inexpensive if you're not. And maybe Shags, you could put the link to the general information about that into the chat. So wanted to make sure to encourage everyone to do that. All right, our first storyteller for this evening is Vicki Ness. And Vicki's been coming to us since Zoom. She is a regular at the Do Tell Swap in Santa Rosa in Sonoma. And we've just been so thrilled that she has brought her unique type of stories and her unique self to us. So Vicki, tell us a story.
Thank you. I'm not on mute. No. And thank you for hosting this. It's wonderful. The corporate headquarters of the insurance company housed themselves in a magnificent building. It was sophisticated and sleek and architecturally perfect, and it sailed across the closely clipped green grass of an industrial park, followed by stumpy ingrown shrubs and perfectly clean cement sidewalks. And inside the building was run just as ship-shape, thank you very much. Everybody knew their numbers, they knew their quotas, they knew their tasks, and they accomplished them with remarkable accuracy. And in fact, if they were smart, they exceeded them. Well, one day, out of the blue, the janitorial closet started eating people, devouring them, gone. The first one was the janitor. He showed up in the early morning darkness and flipped on the lights and stumbled into the closet and pulled on the grimy chain that made the light come on. And there were buckets and mops and brooms and rags and, oh, right in front of him was a magnificent cobalt lake that lapped up against the shore with a pristine white rowboat just tethered to a little stick there, and fishing gear in it, and a glowing sunset with huge black evergreen trees, and the sound of the loon, and the croak of the frog, and the scent of the evergreen. And it didn't take him long to just go on getting that boat and row on out. Well, by day 2, people started to notice that nobody picked up their trash. And there were mugs left in the sink from the day before. And people grumbled, but they went on with their work. Except for one underwriter who was buried in numbers and buried in emails, and all he really wanted to do was empty his trash from yesterday's lunch. So he slipped out down the hall to the closet where he could get just one garbage bag for his own garbage. So he walked into the darkness and felt around for the grimy pull chain and pulled it. And there were the buckets and mops and the brooms and rags. And wait, what? What was that? It was a ballroom, a huge dance room, and big band music boomed out, and the dancers undulated and swayed, beautifully dressed and graceful as aquatic plants in a rhythmic current. He loved big band music, and if he had thought for 1 minute that he could have made a living, oh, that would have been his heart's desire. It was magnificent. And then he saw a sign, and it said, when he picked it up, needed, big band leader, inquire within, now. So he tore up the paper and headed right off to the bandstand. Well, by day 3, maybe day 4, there was the rattle, rattle, rattle of empty rolls of toilet paper in the bathroom. Nobody was happy. There was not only no coffee made in the coffee maker, there was no coffee. And this in a kitchen that was known for free snacks and designer coffee, and there was none of that. In fact, there were nothing but dirty dishes in the sink. And so people called the HR department and squawked and squawked and squawked. And the poor HR lady, she put the phone down for the umpteenth time. She had gotten a text early in the morning with a photo of the janitor in a rowboat holding fish and looking happy as a clam. And under the photo, the text said, "I quit." Oh, how is she going to find a cleaning service this quickly? So down the hall she went, feeling like an aged, tired Tyrannosaurus Rex. Little shrinky arms that couldn't possibly do everything everybody wanted from her, and huge legs and feet so that she could clomp down to every little problem. And she got to the closet and she threw open the door, and it hit the wall and bounced back and hit her. And and she felt around for the keychain and pulled the light, and there were the buckets and the mops and the brooms and the rags. And wait a minute, what was that? Oh my goodness, it glowed. It was a beautiful desert scene with iguanas and snakes here and there, and saguaro cactus reaching their arms up to a cobalt sky. But best of all, right there in the center was a black and white cowboy pony with a hand-tooled, beautiful black leather saddle with silver studs that shone. She had always wanted to be a cowboy, and her brother always got the damn cowboy stuff, and she got the freaking dolls that she never played with. And she looked at the horse and she looked at the scenery, and there was a cowboy hat down by the pony's feet. And the pony snorted and looked at her. Out of those sensible shoes and onto the horse and off into the horizon she went. Well, by day 5, there was not only no toilet paper in the bathrooms, there was no soap in the soap dispensers. And the garbage was overflowing in the kitchen, and everything was a mess. Well, this was an opportunity for the senior vice president to step up and look good. So he called everybody into the conference room, Arctic cold, brilliant white lights down on everyone. And when they were all assembled, he told them they were slackers, they were lazy, they were weak links in the chain. The ship is going down. Find your bootstraps and pull up. And he mangled all his metaphors in a huge fireball of rage and sent it down the table. Because he, as the most underappreciated human being on earth, was really angry. And just to prove his point, he said, "You stay here." And he went out of the room and down the hall to the closet. And he opened the door and felt around for the chain pull and pulled it. And the light came on, and there were the buckets, and there were the mops, and there were the brooms, and there were the rags. Oh my God, it was a bright red, new Harley Davidson. He had never seen a cherry red Harley Davidson in his life. And it had the keys in the ignition. And there was a path up through flower-strewn fields, up to the mountains to freedom. And there was a helmet sitting on the seat with a sticky note with his name on it. Oh, yes, yes, yes. And then he thought to himself, wait a minute. There's something a little more important to do right at this minute. I need to show people who I really am. So he grabbed a broom, and he grabbed handfuls of these wonderful non-woven, antimicrobial, thoroughly disposable cleaning cloths. And he went back to the conference room, and he dumped all the cloths on the table. And with his broom, pounding up and down, he said, "This is what you're going to do. You're going to get each one of those cloths, and you're going to start cleaning. You don't need lunch unless you're a weak link in a sinking ship or something like that." By now, everybody had sunk down into their shoulders, and they took their little non-woven, antimicrobial, thoroughly disposable cleaning cloths, and they went back to their cubicle. And while they were cleaning their keyboard or their phone, the senior vice president was striding down the hall toward his reward, envisioning the accolades, envisioning maybe his paper in the company news. Oh, there'd he be, perfect, handsome. Maybe he'd get some kind of an award for this, for bringing the whole troops together. And then he got to the closet, and he opened the door, and he felt around for the grimy pole, and he pulled it, and there were nothing. There was nothing but a bucket and mops and brooms and rags.
Thank you, Vicky. I'll say I'm never going to look at antimicrobial cloths the same or anything else. You just open our eyes and we see the magic and the weirdness in so many things. Thank you.
Thank you.
Somebody says that's their favorite of your stories so far. So, by the way, I encourage everyone after the stories and during the transitions to put something in the chat to tell the tellers how much you enjoy or what you liked about their stories. All right. Now I have the pleasure to introduce our featured storyteller, Kieran Rana. And Sally and I first met Kieran through Stagebridge, as so many of us here have that Stagebridge connection. And I think everyone who meets him from the first realizes that this is a very special person. But we might not quite understand why. But when you start asking Kieran about himself and you discover that he is a senior Sufi teacher in the Sufi way, and that he's been involved with Sufism for 40 years and more. That he He can do music. He does theater. He does storytelling. He brings his whole self to everything he does in the most creative and powerful way. And we've had him as our featured teller before, and we are so happy to have him back today. He tells personal stories sometimes, and he also loves traditional stories, especially the stories of that trickster, Nasruddin. And I think he may have a story about him for us today. So please let's welcome Kiran Rana.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you so much. So it's sometime in the 2000s, and a phone call is taking place between the Bay Area and the old country. Nasruddin's nephew, Nasiruddin, has been in the US for 2 or 3 years, and he suddenly made it big in the tech world, and he's begging his dear uncle to come and visit. Come for 3 or 4 weeks. No, come for 2 months. No, come for 3 months. Nasruddin is interested, but says he can't. He can't afford to go, and his wife doesn't want to go, and he won't leave her behind. No, of course not, the nephew says. We will pay, and she must come. He talks to his wife and then to his aunt, and he urges her to come. She says, Nephew, I am used to my home. I do my cooking, I shopping, buying vegetable, working garden. A few days away, not problem. But weeks? Oh, maybe I feel I'm bossed by niece. I speak something not nice. I no come. The loving nephew, totally supported by his loving wife, they promise aunt and uncle Nasruddin everything. Their own home, with a garden, new or old home appliances, daily shopping at a nearby market, and the clincher, a regular visit to IKEA. Mrs. Nasruddin is dancing and chanting, IKEA, IKEA, as she agrees. Nasruddin has followed the negotiations. He has a couple requests of his own. Nephew, he says, I want to drive on your big American nothing pay way. His nephew says, no problem. I'll pay for driving lessons before you come. When you're here, we'll rent a car. Nasruddin says, oh, wonderful. Well, can I also have a small computer? Nephew says, Uncle, of computers here there is no end. Just like that, the deal is done. Both sides are happy. And a few weeks later, the Nasruddins arrive in the USA. So let me interrupt for a moment. I want to thank Liz and Sally and Tailspinners for this invitation and for the opportunity to share story after a long time. Also, today is Holocaust Remembrance Day. So let's take a moment to remember this almost unbelievable betrayal of the human spirit. So, have all of you heard of Nasruddin? Here's some background. Nasruddin is an almost mythic character, and to some he's a wise man, and to others he's a fool. He seems to live in many places at the same time, and some people find him easily, and some people don't find him at all. His stories appear in literary and oral traditions from the Middle East and Arabia to Russia, France, even China. Some call him Mullah, others call him Hoja. I like to call him Uncle Nasruddin. And sometimes I call him the Nasruddin. In the Sufi tradition, to which, as Liz said, I belong, Nasruddin is often a disguised teacher Mostly he brings attention to behavior that models what we now call cognitive biases. In the older cultures, it was called the old villain. And it's the kind of thinking that is responsible for many errors, conflicts, misunderstandings. Now, I'm probably going to run a little over time, but I want to mention this. Elon Musk recently listed 50 cognitive biases that he wanted taught to kids in schools. Things like the self-serving bias and the streetlight effect and the bandwagon effect and the halo bias and the naive effect, and a big one these days, which is the Dunning-Kruger effect. And you might want to look all this up. Anyway, Nasruddin's stories show how biases trap us, and if you can figure out what they are showing us. And in the stories I'm going to tell now, maybe you can see if you can tell what biases are at work. So back to the Nasruddins and their visit to the USA. When Nasruddin and his wife arrive at immigration and SFO, an agent stops him and says, "Sir, you must identify yourself before we can let you in." Nasruddin turns to his wife and asks for her pocket mirror. And he looks carefully into the mirror. He said, "Oh, yes, definitely, Nasruddin." Eventually, though they get through immigration, they're greeted warmly by the nephew and his wife. The new house is darling. Mrs. Nasruddin loves it. There is a store of food. The younger woman explains how everything works. There is dinner waiting. The Nasruddins are tired. And right after the nephew and wife leave, they get into a warm bed and fall into a deep sleep. Thus begins their visit. Nasruddin's nephew and wife really like the old couple. They want to show them everything. Soon after they arrive, they go on a picnic to Tahoe, on a trip to Tahoe. On the way there, they stop at a big meadow for a picnic lunch. They're having a nice lunch. And from a distance, there floats a hot air balloon with a man in it. As it gets near them, the man shouts down, "Excuse me, can you tell me where I am?" Quickly, Nasruddin replies, "Well, you're about 15 meters above the ground." The balloonist is taken aback, then says, "Thank you. Are you a spiritual teacher?" Nasruddin is very proud. He says, "How did you know that?" The balloonist says, "Well, because what you told me, while true, it's quite useless." Nasruddin smiles back. He says, "Aha, aha, you must be a spiritual seeker." Now the balloonist puffs up with pride and says, "How did you know that?" He says, "Well, because you're lost and you want to blame me." Now we all know Nasruddin wants to drive on the nothing to pay ways. His nephew gives him a few tips, and then says, "Uncle, just go for it." So Nasruddin is driving down the middle of the 580, which is near their home, when his mobile phone rings in its hands-free cradle. Try saying that 3 times fast, hands-free cradle. He voice activates the phone, and his wife's voice comes on and says, "Nasruddin, I hope you are drive careful." "I always drive careful," says Nasruddin. "Why are you so worried?" "Well," she says, "I am listening radio news, and they are saying that on no pay way where you are driving, there is one idiot driving wrong direction." "My dear," says Nasruddin, "there isn't one idiot. There are hundreds of them." Anyway, as Nasruddin gets familiar with the computer, he falls under the spell of social media. He reads on Facebook that most travel accidents happen to people within 2 miles of their home. One morning, his wife comes down from bed, finds him busy on the computer, surrounded by newspapers and maps. Wife, get ready. Get ready, wife. We are moving. But I love this home, she says. Don't worry, he said. I have found the perfect match, exactly like this home. But for what then we have to move, she says. See, wife, it says right here. It says most accidents happen within 2 miles of the house. We are going to move 3.5 miles from here to new house. I don't know if they ever moved, but anyway, one evening Nasruddin comes back from his nephew's home. The wife has stayed on there to chat with some friends from the old country. Soon it gets dark. A group of people returning from the movies see an old man searching the ground under the lamppost in front of the house. They introduce themselves and say, "What have you lost?" "Well, you see, I have lost my keys," says Uncle Nasruddin. They start to help him look. After a while, someone says, "Well, can you give us an idea of where you might have dropped them?" "Oh, yes, I dropped them in the house." Then why are we looking for them out here?" "Well, you see, the electrics went out in the house and it is too dark to look there, so I came out here where the light is." It's a street light effect. One day, Nasruddin's nephew, Nasir Uddin, is called to serve on a jury. The order is addressed to Mr. N. Uddin. Nasruddin says to his nephew, "Let me go, my boy, let me go." And soon the older man is sitting in the jury box of a case of robbery with violence. The prosecutor paints a vivid picture of the crime with much detail. Almost before he's finished, Nasruddin is exclaiming, you are right, he did it, no doubt, no doubt." But then the defense attorney speaks soberly, sternly, showing that the defendant couldn't have done it. He's a person of good character. Nobody saw him near the scene of the crime. He has 2 cats. Nasruddin, again agitated, shouts, of course, you are right, he is innocent." At which point the judge, a sober man, says, "But Mr. Uddin, they cannot both be right." To which Nasruddin says, yes, absolutely, you are right." So Nasruddin, he grows to like wandering around the Bay Area. One day he wanders into MoMA in the city, and the old man loves what he sees. He loves it, and he starts to draw. Now he has an unusual and original imagination, and his mix of calligraphy and stylized portraiture becomes locally famous. Soon, with his nephew's contacts, he is able to exhibit. One day, a man from his country wanders into the gallery. The two greet each other warmly. After a while, the man asks, "May I ask what you are doing here?" Nasruddin explains. "Oh," says the man, "you are the famous artist Nasruddin?" "I have that honor." Nasruddin replies, "Well, one question. Why don't you paint things the way they are?" asks the stranger. "And how is that?" inquires Nasruddin. You know, said the man, how they really look. I am afraid I do not know what you mean, responds Nasruddin. Like this, says the man. He pulls out his wallet and he extracts a small passport-sized photograph of his wife. This is my wife. This is the way exactly how she looks. I see, said Nasruddin, taking the photograph in hand. I see. She is very small and quite flat. After a few weeks, Mrs. Nasruddin decides she wants to go for belly dancing lessons with her niece-in-law. Without them, Nasruddin starts to hang out at Starbucks. But he finds his reputation as a wise man catches up with him there. And he spends a lot of time answering questions about people's problems, about life. That he doesn't want to give up his daily 4-shot, 2 raw sugars, dry cappuccino. So one day he puts up a large notice. Questions answered. 2 questions, $100. For the first couple hours, nobody bothers him. Then eventually, a local citizen walks up and says, Say, brother, ain't $100 just a bit expensive? Yes, replies Nasruddin. Yes, I suppose it is. And your second question? So, like in the last story, friends of Nasruddin's nephew have met him and ask if he will help them. They have a small boy who bangs a drum all day, and he loves every moment of it. He will not be quiet no matter what anyone says or does. His parents and neighbors have called various people to get help with the situation. It's not working. The first advisor tells the boy the noise will damage his eardrums. The child is not a doctor. This means nothing to him. The second advisor tells the boy, you see, for some people, drumming is a religious activity done only on special occasions. The child is not a priest and he's not a scholar and he doesn't care. The third advisor offers the neighbor plugs for their ears. They are not happy. The drumming does not stop. The fourth advisor gives the boy books to read. And he looks at the books, and he looks at the drum, and he chooses the drum. I'll read later, he says. The fifth advisor gives the boy meditation exercises that will make him calm and quiet. Soon the boy discovers that he really enjoys drumming during his meditations. The sixth advisor gives the neighbors books on a method of controlling their anger through biofeedback. Enough said. Nasruddin comes to the couple's home and meets the boy. He is a bright, alert, energetic, charming boy. Nasruddin thinks for a while. Then he walks out to the tool shed which he passed on the way in and comes back with a hammer and chisel. He goes over to the boy and sits down beside him. You know, boy, he says, have you ever wondered? Well, have you ever wondered what is inside this drum? Soon after this incident, Nasruddin dreams he is talking with God. And he is complaining. Lord, why is it that so many unworthy and shallow people are given much comfort and pleasure. But I, praying faithfully, am poor and feel insignificant. In the world, I feel insignificant. Ha 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 ha. That's easy, replies the friend. When the shallow pray to me, I get tired of hearing their voices pretty quick. I fulfill their wishes, so they stop praying. But you, Nasruddin, you are mischievous, you are entertaining, and I find your voice as sweet as honey. By not granting your wishes, I get to hear your voice for a longer time. And I get to teach and guide you. I keep you close to me. And that is your deepest wish, isn't it? That same night, Nasruddin realizes he has been missing the deep talks he has with the friend when he is in his home, in his village. Soon after that, Mrs. Nasruddin and he go home.
Thank you, Kiran. Nasruddin is not the only one whose voice we want to keep hearing and is like honey and something sweet and something nurturing and nourishing, and to from laughter to profundity. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. That's very sweet.
All right, we have lots more stories. Oh, I'm going to put just some information about Kiran and 2 websites that he has for you to learn more. And now I get to introduce Beverly Schwartz, who again is one of the people who has come to us only because we're stuck, if we want to say it, and we're blessed to be in this Zoom world. And she's coming to us from upstate New York. And we always want to hear your next story, Bev. So please tell us.
Okay, the name of the story is Back in the Saddle. It'll be performed this Sunday at the Proctor's Theater in Schenectady, New York. I'm sitting in a circle in the cafeteria in a faculty room meeting. I'm kind of, I want to get home. You know, it's been a long day. And the principal has the PTA there. I'm going, oh my God, we have to listen to the PTA or something. And the principal says, this is going to be a short meeting. We only have one thing to decide here. Oh, good. Well, the PTA is going to treat every single child, not treat, but take every single child to the Great Escape. You know, it's where they have animals, they have games, they have rides, they have everything. And the parents can come too. The only kids that won't be able to go are those who had behavior problems this year and were expelled for a certain time or suspended. They can't go. And if a child cannot afford it, then the parents have a choice of sending their kids to school or keeping them home for the day. That's not fair, I'm thinking. I feel like my face is getting red. I said, it's not fair. If the kids can't afford it, then the PTA should really, maybe pay for them if it's really, really true. And the kids that were misbehaving or behavior problems, their parents had been called in, they had some type of punishment. They had done their time. They shouldn't be punished for this. And then the principal says, we need one teacher to stay behind and be here in case kids do come to school, but there's only probably going to be a handful. Most parents will probably just keep their kids home. But I was still feeling red and feeling red. And I looked around, some people were looking at the ground. Nobody was, raising their hand. And I raised my hand and said, I will do it. And I said, this is not fair. And I object that the PTA won't pay for them. And I object these kids have paid their time. Well, without hesitation, the principal said, great, we have a teacher. We're all dismissed. You can go home. And everyone scattered real fast, but they knew I was pretty mad. Well, the time came for the field trip. Now, I felt that these kids deserved something better than that what they were going to have to do. The teachers were sending books and work down for the day, and I was supposed to teach, quote, the 60 kids that could come that day. And that day they did come. They were from kindergarten to 6th grade, and there was 45 of them. The parents who couldn't afford it probably had to go to work because the kids came and said, my parents have to go to work and they don't have the money for a babysitter. And then the behavior kids also came because their parents didn't want them home getting in trouble, so they went to school. And there they were, walking in with their books. One little girl was crying. Two boys in the older grades, they were calling each other, your mother and this and that. And I said, separate, put your books on the back table, all of you. And they looked at me, well, we're supposed to do work. Later, I said, just put all your books on the back table. Now the buses just so happened to be behind my windows in the parking lot. And everyone had come to school. And we all went to the windows and watched them get on the buses and start singing 100 bottles of beer on the wall. And off the buses went. And then they all turned around and looked at me. They looked so sad, so upset, like I wanted to cry with them. I said, okay, kids, you see those big bags and all that bubbles that I had bought and toys and jump ropes and those cones and all that stuff. We're going to go out and have some fun in the backyard and play. Oh, good. All of a sudden there was some smiles. We weren't going to get stuck right away in this classroom. And we went, and I had bags of prizes, like, blowing the bubbles and other things like the ping pong and cards and stuff. And I arranged for the big boys to help me. I said, could you help me, supervise so that we can have games and we all can win prizes? And we played out there with prizes. We played kickball. The kids were helping each other and they started laughing and they were having fun. They started really feeling good about what we were doing. And I said, okay, we're up. We have to get back. Let's go, guys. But can we stay out here any longer? No, let's go. So we got back into the classroom. And when I was little, what happened was there was a place called Lincoln Park where in the summer, everybody who had the money would take the bus from our Forts Ferry school and go down twice a week and learn how to swim and then come back. And my parents couldn't afford it. In fact, they had a jar, which every night they put money in so that at the end of the year, I and my brothers could go on a field trip because we saved money up all year long for it. And there was a library that was open just on those 2 days that everyone went to Lincoln Park. So I decided I'd walk up and see my friends get on the bus. And I went into the library saying, could I come in and get a book? And the teacher said, aren't you going with the other 3rd grade kids in the neighborhood to the pool? And I said, no, my parents can't afford it. So that summer was the best summer in my life because she made me assistant librarian. And twice a week I went in and helped her. And I learned all about the library and read kids' books that came for kids, that came for a class reading time. And at the end of the year, and I still have them to this day, 3 little green turtles in a silk scarf as a thank you for being the assistant library. So I decided something like that had to be done with this group of kids. Okay, kids, I want everyone to stand, and I assign, you're going to get assigned to each other, and you older boys, you're going to help me cross a street. And they're looking at me. He said, we're going on a field trip. Really? But we're not supposed, shh. We're not going to tell a soul that we're going on a field trip. No one in the whole school is supposed to know what we did. And I took them and said, follow me. Now, the secretaries in school and the custodian, we're going to go to the side door as quietly as we can. So no one's going to notice that we're leaving the school. The boys looked at me, the older boys said, she's crazy. And so we did. The boys helped. And I said, the boys are going to help us cross the street, which was a big, busy street that we were on. So we got down and we waited for the cars to stop. And the boys, two boys are holding their hands like the traffic stop. And the whole group of us crossed the street. And what was across the street but the biggest fire station in the whole city of Troy? And I said, we're going to have a tour. And I had called one of my little boys' fathers who was a fireman and said, could you give this class a tour and something that they'll always remember for the rest of their lives? They said, sure. And we walked to the front door and I timed it that they knew at what time we were coming. And there was all the firemen in 2 rows. And as we approached the firemen, they all started clapping for us like, here they come. They were welcoming us. And we had the best tour. We got dressed up in their clothes, got to ring the bells, got to go down. One of them got down the pole. The kids just like lost track of time until finally it was time to go. And on the way out, we got pins of assistant firemen, and each of us got a plastic fireman hat. And there we walked back to the school. And at that point, there was not one unhappy kid in that bunch. And then we walked back and our lunches had been put on the back of the table. Oh, they were hungry at that point. No, we're not going to eat. You're going to take those lunches home. But no. And I said, I want you to sit down and just kind of relax. Take it easy. There's a knock at the door. I said to the older boys, you've been so helpful today. You can go and get what the people at the door have for us. They were getting used to me asking them to help. For the first time, probably, they weren't treated like the other kids because they were all the discipline problems. They were never asked to help with anything. And at the door, I had ordered pizza. And we had a pizza party. And I had bought ice cream and I got ice cream for them. And the little girls, who hadn't really helped that much because the older kids were helping, they passed out the ice cream. And the other girls helped pass out the napkins and soda. And they sat there and at that point, everyone was talking and was friendly and they were forgetting why they were there and what a great day they were having. They kept saying, oh, thank you, Miss Schwartz, thank you. And then they said, what do you have planned next? We still have about an hour and 45 minutes. One of the boys asked me. I said, you're right. Shh. I said, I want you to get the DVD and plug it in for me. And then I borrowed the microwave from the teacher's room and put it in our room. And I started popping popcorn. And it smells so great. And I had the little girls pass out the popcorn and one of the bags fell. And one of the worst kids in the whole school, which was there, said, oh, let me help you. And was so kind and sweet and nice to the little girl. And I said, I have a movie to show. Now, these kids couldn't afford a movie. We were in inner city school. And I got the #1 hit, E.T. Well, everyone watched it, including me, which I hadn't seen it. And we had our popcorn and I handed out bubble gum. I said, shh, it's against the school rules, but I think we can do it. We had a great time. Now, at the end of the day, we cleaned up the room. We got our books. And the boy said, what happens? Our teacher said we had to get all our work done today. I said, tell him to see me. Nobody saw me. and they lined up. One of the worst kids came up to me and he high-fived me. And he said, I'll be back next year. And I said, oh, don't get suspended on my account. Oh no, I'll do it all on my own. The little girls hugged me. And all of a sudden one said, a round of applause. So we all gave ourselves a round of applause. They had felt appreciated. They were in a better place. They walked out with their heads high, laughing, talking. They waved, thank you for a great day. They were back in the saddle. Thank you.
Thank you, Beverly. Beverly, you're a great storyteller, but more, we know you are a great, great, great teacher.
Oh,
A
thanks.
special teacher,
Right.
the kind that passes on how a teacher or librarian can change a child's life. You really brought it to us. Thank you. All right, we've got lots more stories to come, but I think we probably need a little, just a moment or two, a minute or two to stretch, maybe get a glass of water if you need to. After we come in 2 minutes, just literally 1 minute, because we have so many more great stories, but we're going to have Renu Narayan next, and after her, Andre Wilson. So do stand up, do something to get the oxygen flowing. Breath in. You want to join me and breathe it out. Wiggle the shoulders. Oh, we feel full of stories, but we have room for more. Okay, everyone, let's get ready to hear our next storyteller, Renu Narayan, all the way from India. We've been so lucky and grateful to have you with us and become part of our California storytelling community. Please tell us a story.
Thank you so much, Liz. Thank you. And I'm grateful to be here too. I only hope that there's not going to be any outside noise when I'm telling a story. If there is, then I will just go on mute. So today I'm going to be sharing a story from our Hindu mythology. And the story is called Bhasmasura. Now, as we all know, there always used to be a war between the Asuras and the Devas. The Devas followed the route of dharma or righteousness, and the Asuras followed the route of adharma or violence. And the Devas and Asuras were always fighting for power, probably more from the side of the Asuras. There were 3 lokas or 3 realms. Devaloka, where the gods resided. Then came the Bhuloka, or the earth, where humans resided. And then came the Patala, or the realm where the Asuras resided. There was one Asura called Bhasmasura. He was powerful, but he craved for more power. And as all Asuras knew that they had to pray to the Trimurti, one of them, either Shiva or Brahma, who always granted boons to their devotees. And so Bhasmasura decided that he would pray to Lord Shiva, who was the destroyer, because he thought he loved Shiva. And so he went into a big penance. He put his palms together and started to chant, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. And he stayed in that posture for thousands of years, till an anthill had grown on top of him and covered him completely. But he was oblivious to all of this. He was so much into his penance to Lord Shiva. And finally, up there on Mount Kailasha, where Shiva resided, he was pleased with Bhasmasura's devotion. And so he appeared in front of Bhasmasura. And he said, Bhasmasura, what do you wish for? And on hearing that celestial voice, Bhasmasura broke out of that anthill. He bowed low before Lord Shiva and said, "Please grant me the boon of immortality." Shiva shook his head and he said, "By the law, all that is born has to die. Ask me for anything else." And Bhasmasura thought for a while, and then she said, "Please grant me a boon by which, if I place my hand on somebody's head, they should turn into ash." Shiva considered that a strange boon. "Tatastu," he said, "so be it." Now Bhasmasura was thrilled. He said, Can I please place my hand on your head and see if it's true?" Now Shiva was taken aback. He had not expected that. And so he started to run away. And Bhasmasura went in hot pursuit. He had to place his hand on Shiva's head. Shiva ran into a dense forest. Who could help him but Vishnu, the protector? And so he turned to the other person from the Trimurti and he said, "Vishnu, help me." And Vishnu said, "Don't worry." And as Bhasmasura was running and running behind Shiva, he stopped in his tracks because just ahead of him was the most charming person he had ever seen in his life. There she was, moving from bush to bush, plucking flowers with her slender, beautiful fingers. He went close to her and said, "My dear, who are you?" And she turned to him, and with a very graceful smile, she said, "Who are you who asks me who I am when I am in my own home?" And he said, "I am Bhasmasura. I want to marry you." "Marry me? But I don't want to marry you." "I love you, but I don't love you." "I'll take care of you. I'll protect you." "I can take care and I can protect myself," she said. Please, please promise me you'll be my wife. I will take care of you for the rest of your life." "Well, you seem like a very nice person. I would like to marry you, but you see, I have taken a vow." "What is it?" "I have said I will only marry someone who can dance as gracefully as I do." Bhasmasura said, "Yes, I don't know how to dance, but I'm willing to learn." "You're willing to learn? That's wonderful. Shall I teach you?" Yes, please. "Okay, we shall begin now." "Of course," he said. And so she started to dance. "You must follow whatever I do," she said. Bhasmasura was only too happy to do that. And so she started, "Takadinadom, takadinadom, dinadom, dinadom." And he tried to repeat. Of course, he was not as graceful. He was very, very clumsy. But whatever she did, he was trying to follow as much as possible. "Takadinom, takadinom, 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 takadinom." And she placed her hand on her head. And of course, in that frenzy, he too placed his hand on his head, and whoosh, he turned into ash. Mission accomplished. And that beautiful damsel, Mohini, transformed into Vishnu. And he went back to Vaikunta, his abode. And he called his friend Shiva and said, "Shiva, be careful next time what kind of boon you grant to somebody." Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. That was such a wonderful telling of such a wonderful part of mythology.
Thank you.
Too. I don't think I could dance as gracefully as she either, but we loved what the Zoom camera couldn't even keep up with you, much less Bhasmasura keeping up with Mohini. All right. Our next storyteller is Andre Wilson, and he is from here in the Bay, right here in the East Bay. And Andre has been with coming to Tailspinners for a long time, but not for a bit of time, not as much on Zoom as we see you before we went on Zoom. So we're so happy you're here, and please tell us a story. And
Thank you, Liz.
he's a award-winning poet as well, I wanted to say. Yes.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Liz, for that gracious introduction. And thank you, Renu, for that phenomenal story. And I look forward to seeing you at the Kata Potpourri Festival in India this Sunday. Long before there were steamships, sail ships sailed the 7 seas. The Atlantic Ocean was 3,000 miles wide and 5 miles deep. There are also mermaids in those days, sea creatures that had the upper body of a woman and the tail of a fish. If the mermaid heard the name of a crew member on a passing ship, they would demand that crew member by name. And if the crew did not throw him overboard, the mermaid would bang on the ship, cause it to sink, and everyone to drown. So the captains of these ships got very smart. They changed the names of their crew members to various objects on the ship. The captain would say, "Scissors, go climb the mast and set sail." And a mermaid would leap out of the water alongside the ship and say, "Give me scissors!" And the crew members would whoop, throw a pair of scissors overboard. And the mermaid would grab the scissors and sink back down to the deep. The ship continued on its way. The very next day, the captain said, "Suite of furniture, go to the stateroom and make up the bed." And the mermaid leapt out of the water alongside the ship and said, "Give me suite of furniture!" And the crew members threw a suite of furniture overboard, like tables and chairs and clocks. And the mermaid grabbed these pieces of furniture and sank back down to the deep. But by and by, one day, the captain forgot. He said, "Sam, go to the galley and fix supper." And a mermaid leapt up alongside the ship and said, "Give me Sam!" And when the captain realized what he had done, he said, "What have I done?" And the mermaid began to bang on the ship, bang on the ship, bang on the ship. It's like to pry apart the boards. And the crew members ran to the captain and said, "What shall we do if we have nothing else on the ship named Sam? If we don't give the mermaid something named Sam, she'll sink this ship and cause us to drown." The captain gave Sam a very sad, grave look. "I'm sorry, Sam, but whatever you do down there with the mermaid, do not tell her that you like fish." "Aye, aye, sir." And so the crew members picked up Sam and threw him overboard. And as he fell alongside the ship, the mermaid lifted out of the water and grabbed him and said, "I got Sam! I got Sam!" And her big, long hair began to wrap around Sam and form a protective cocoon that dove into the water and swam so fast that he was able to breathe inside that protective ball of hair. And by, the mermaid arrived at a sea cave on the edge of a cliff. Now, there was only one way in that cave and one way out, and that was by water. And that big ball of hair around the mermaid arrived at the shore inside of the cave, and her long hair unwrapped and untangled itself from Sam and deposited him on the beach inside the cave. And Sam, he looked around that cave and saw all of these pieces of furniture that had been tossed overboard from various passing ships and the mermaid had brought back to the cave. And the mermaid, she had long green hair and purple lips, and she began to slither and slunk up towards Sam. She said, "You're looking very nice. Do you like fish?" "No, ma'am, I never cooked the stuff." "Very well, then. Let's marry." And so Sam married the mermaid. Now the mermaid, she liked to eat her seafood not only raw, but alive. She ate lobster. She ate crabs. She ate swordfish. But Sam ate seaweed and seagrass. By and by, the mermaid came up to him again. "You looking very nice. Do you like fish?" "No, ma'am, I never cooked the stuff." "Very well, then. Let's feast." And so the mermaid continued to eat her raw, alive seafood. And Sam ate seaweed and seagrass. But Sam was very smart. He remembered that when the mermaid captured him, her big long hair formed a protective cocoon around him so that he was able to breathe underwater. And he noticed that when she slept that night, her body remained still, but her hair continued to move and undulate about her body like the tentacles of an octopus. Her hair was alive and seemed to acted independent of her thought. So Sam got an idea. So the very next time the mermaid came up to him, "You're looking very nice. Do you like fish?" "No, ma'am, but I know how to prepare the finest raw fish in the world." "What? You know how to prepare the finest raw fish in the world?" "Yes, ma'am. I traveled to ports all over the world, and I learned the very best recipes for preparing raw seafood." "Oh, very well then. Let's feast." And so Sam gave the mermaid a list of ingredients to get. And she swam out of the cave and brought back tons of ingredients and also lots of varieties of seafood. And Sam, of course, there was all these dishes and pots and pans and all these cookware and everything around the kitchen, the knives and whatnot. So that were tossed overboard. So he started to prepare this magnificent feast of raw seafood. And the mermaid sat before it and began to eat and said, "Carpaccio from Napoli, sushi from Yokohama, ceviche from Valparaiso. This is the best feast of raw seafood I ever had." And the mermaid continued to eat and eat and eat. And she got tireder and tireder until finally she fell asleep with her head of living hair on Sam's lap, and the hair continued to move and undulate about her head and body. Now, Sam, he got those pair of scissors that had been tossed overboard from the ship, and he carefully clipped off the hair of the mermaid. And as he did so, her hair began to wrap around his arm and body because it was alive. And he carefully tiptoed away from the mermaid, dragging this giant train of hair that was beginning to wrap around him like a cocoon. Now the mermaid, she woke and she said, "What happened to my hair? What happened to my hair?" She looked over at the edge of the cave and she saw Sam. And she said, come back with my hair. I cannot leave my cave without it. But by that time, the hair finished wrapping itself around Sam and dove into the water and swam so fast that he was able to breathe underwater in that protective capsule of hair. And by, that giant hairball arrived at a beach and began to untangle itself from Sam like the tentacles of an octopus, and it began to slink and slunk over to the water where it sank out of sight like a giant jellyfish. Now Sam, he had spent 6 years with the mermaid, and he wanted to get as far away from the East Coast as possible before the mermaid's hair grew back. And he did not want to go to the West Coast because the mermaid might swim around Cape Horn and come to the other side. So Sam, he settled in the Midwest, in the state of Kansas, where he became a farmer, and he never saw the sea again.
Wow. Thank you, Andre. Boy, we had much fun listening to you tell that story. It seemed like you had fun telling it, and no one Zoom screen like you. Thank you so much.
Oh, welcome. My pleasure. It's an honor. Thank you very much.
All right. So our next storyteller is Claire Castell. There you are, Claire. Claire's someone else that Sally and I have met through Stagebridge, and many of you know her from there. And she has gone from Stagebridge to telling at all kinds of places. She's really busted out, and we're just thrilled that you're here tonight to tell us a story.
Well, thanks. I'm going to tell my story. It's called Letting Go. And I know that there's a few people in this audience that's had a similar experience. And by the way, kudos to Andre. He is just so hard to follow. He's so amazing. But my story is about the home I had in Oakland was big. I had 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and it was really a lot. And it had 4 sets of stairs. It was really a lot for just one woman and 2 cats. And I had a garage and a basement. And of course, like everybody, those things were filled. But they were filled with treasures and cherished wonderful things that I had bought over the years. But I knew that the house was worth a lot of money. And if I sold it, the profit would help me in my retirement. So I started looking for a smaller, smaller place, affordable, with no stairs, something that was suitable for just me and my 2 cats, and someplace safe. And so, as some of you know, I found this 2-bedroom place in a senior community, which is called Rossmore. Now, I don't have a garage, don't have a basement, and I'm thinking in Oakland, how am I going to move? How am I going to decide what to take? How can I even part with all these treasures? It wasn't a thing that I hadn't bought with great care and joy and love. Well, I started out, I took a bunch of clothes to Goodwill, but they just heaped my stuff in big bins. I was $150 blouse. So I knew that they were not going to love my stuff. I didn't feel very good about giving all my treasures to Goodwill. And I wanted to give them to other charities or people that really would love my stuff and appreciate them. Well, the first thing I did was post on Nextdoor about the 100-odd obscure music collection on CDs that I never listened to, and found somebody to take them. And this man, His name was Don, and he ended up being vital to my whole move. He was helping me week after week. He had a pickup truck, Don, and he helped people with cleanouts. And being a Berkeley guy, Don was all about the recycling. So when he took something like my barbecue and my blankets and my quilts, and he would try and sell some things, but then if he couldn't, he would just take them to Urban Ore. Now, some of you know Urban Ore around here. It's a recycling warehouse of doors and furniture and home goods. But I tell you, Don was my knight in shining armor. When I got to the third bedroom, and I had an antique dresser. It was really hard. I know a dresser doesn't sound very personal, but it was really hard to let go of that one. Think about it. I didn't have room for it, but it was my first piece of real furniture after my divorce that I bought. And I even had to make installment payments on it because, you know, I was just a starving single mom. But it represented my emancipation. And I wanted it to have a good home. And now I remembered that I love the Oakland Museum White Elephant Sale. And they hold a sale every year in this warehouse that's as big as a football field, probably 2 football fields. And I'd feel good if they would take it. And I called them up because some of these places were getting picky. And they said, yes, we'll take it. And this young couple turned out to be a married couple. They show up with the truck and they looked at my dresser and they said, oh, wow, that's great. We'll love this. And I said, well, you know, how about this Art Deco lamp? So they said, yeah, that'll be great. And I drug out a few other things and they were just thrilled with my stuff. And I thought, oh, well, that makes me feel so much better. Later on, I found a place, a charity. It's called Out of the Closet. It's on 18th Street in Oakland. And they use their profits for AIDS research. And the young woman at the counter, she just loved my art donations. And one day I was dropping off some things and pulling out of the parking lot, but I saw this young couple in the parking lot. They turned out they were brother and sister, and they were loading a sofa from the charity onto their rented pickup truck. And, you know, she was a gorgeous woman. She looked like an Amazon princess. She had this long brown hair, and I just was kind of taken with her. And so I chat these guys up. I said, oh, well, you guys need another sofa? I've got an extra one at my house. And I'm joking, thinking they're going, oh, no, we have one, we're good. But they said, well, we could use it in the other bedroom, looking at each other. I said, well, follow me home. So they follow me home. And out my house, I take them up all the flights of stairs to the top bedroom, and they haul down that sofa. And then they pulled away. And of course, I was thinking, you know, maybe I shouldn't have just brung complete strangers in my house, but they loved it. They were so grateful. So Don, he contributed, here, let me get a drink. Don continued to help me week after week and always recycling. He was really my knight in shining armor. And so finally I get down to pretty close to where I thought I needed to be to fit my stuff into the big truck. And you guys live in neighborhoods like this where people leave stuff on the curb, free stuff for anybody to come and take. And in my neighborhood, it was a popular thing. So I had just finished cleaning out the basement and all the Christmas stuff. I had boxes and boxes of Christmas stuff that I really didn't need. So I put them on the curb. And the next day I looked out my upstairs window down out on the curb, and a man and a little boy jump out of their pickup truck, and they grab all the boxes of the Christmas stuff. I just thought, wow, those guys must really love Christmas. Well, I'm getting to the day. It was almost the day before the big truck came, and I had some more things on the curb, and a scruffy guy, he comes by, and I was out there and looking at my stuff, and I just thought, hey, do you need a file cabinet? You know, I've got one upstairs. And he says, well, yeah, I might. I furnish my entire house with things I get from the curb. I thought, all right, come on in. So he treks up all the stairs, and he liked it was a wicker filing cabinet. And he takes it with him, and I watched him trotting up the street with it. It was so funny. You know, you all have moved, I'm sure, and the whole moving thing was really stressful. But I did expect that letting go of all my precious things to be harder. Oddly, I don't even miss them. I can't remember what it was. I mean, what were the things? But what I do remember is Dawn, who saved my sanity, and the Oakland Museum White Elephant Sale couple who loved my dresser and my stuff. And I remember the Amazon princess and her brother who took the sofa, the scruffy guy on the street, and the man, the father and his son, who really loved Christmas. I knew my treasures were loved.
Thank you, Claire. And Don, your knight in shining armor, I think we all are going to need his telephone number. So I'll put it in the chat. Thank you, Claire. That was very relatable. Very. Okay. We have one more storyteller, and then Sally, who will also tell a story and to help us wrap up. And our next storyteller is Larry Kluger, also known to one and all as Lariat Larry. And with no further ado, Larry, tell us a story.
Okay, I'm going to be telling a true tale of the Old West. Ben Thorne came to California in 1849 as a 20-year-old looking for gold. He had heard about the discovery of gold, and just like many others, wanted to get some for himself. He told his friends, I'll find lots of gold and be set for life. Didn't quite work out that way, but it wasn't because of lack of hard work. Ben worked very hard. And when he didn't find gold at one mining camp, he moved to another and another. In those early days of the California gold rush, there was lots of crime without much serious attempt at law enforcement. And Ben saw a lot of that crime. He thought, there's got to be some way to bring law and order to the state. So in 1855, Ben Thorne became a law enforcement officer in Calaveras County. It was a long and dangerous learning process, but he learned. In March of 1861, Sheriff Ben Thorne had in his jail a prisoner named Jesus Villalobos, who had been convicted of murdering a man who had tried to arrest him for horse theft in the town of Jenny Lind. He had been sentenced to death, but his conviction was up for appeal to the California Supreme Court. When that conviction was upheld, he was scheduled to be hanged on March 19th of 1861. 4 days before his execution date, at the request of his mother, he was taken out of jail to a daguerreotype gallery to be photographed. Photography was pretty new back then, and people didn't generally have photos of their friends and relatives. So it was a common practice for someone to have a photo taken of their recently deceased, or in this case, soon to be deceased loved one. So they had an image by which to remember them. A man of huge size and strength, Villalobos was escorted to the gallery by Sheriff Thorne and another officer. As Villalobos' head was being placed in the brace that would keep it motionless for the 30 seconds necessary to expose the film, Sheriff Thorne couldn't help thinking about that rope that would hold that head motionless in just 4 days. On the way back to the jail, the other officer said he had forgotten something at the gallery, and he left Sheriff Thorne alone with the prisoner. They continued, with Thorne keeping Villalobos 8 feet in front of him. As they neared the jail, Villalobos whirled about, crouched low, and charged Sheriff Thorne. He grabbed the sheriff in a bear hug and pulled his pistol from its holster. Thorne grabbed the hand with the pistol, and the two men struggled for control of the weapon, but Villalobos was able to pull his hand free. Sheriff Thorne had been in some tight situations before, but he knew this could be his last. Gathering all his strength, he threw Villalobos to the ground and jumped on top of him. But Villalobos was able to cock the pistol and jam the barrel into the sheriff's belly. With lightning speed of mind and body, Thorne hit the barrel of the pistol aside with his left hand and rammed the forefinger of his right hand as far up the nostril of the outlaw as it would go. Ah! It caused such intense and excruciating pain that Villalobos loosened his grip and dropped the pistol. Help, help, yelled Sheriff Thorne. He shoved the pistol aside and held the outlaw securely until friends could come and help him escort his prisoner back to jail, where Villalobos showed great remorse and apologized profusely to Sheriff Thorne. Now, Villalobos' lawyers had been working very hard to save him. And 2 days later, they were successful. They secured a reprieve for him from the governor. His sentence was commuted to life in prison. Ben Thorne went on to have many more adventures. He brought law and order to Calaveras County and served for nearly 50 years. But in early April of 1861, he had one more task associated with this case. Sheriff Ben Thorne escorted Jesus Villalobos to San Quentin to serve out his sentence, this time being much more careful and remembering his special secret weapon.
Ah, thank you so much, Larry. I wish this was the weapon that was more, not secret, but anyway, that was what a fascinating story and taken from the historical record, right? Yeah.
It was.
Yeah. Truth is stranger than fiction. I want to know about that other officer. I think he was in on the, who went back, who
The
said,
source I got it from didn't say.
well, something's fishy there. Thanks so much, Larry. Okay, Sally, I'm turning it over to you. Take us home. I'll mute myself and you unmute. Can you unmute?
Am I unmuted? Yes, I am. Right? All right, it's time to say goodnight, you all. I'm going to do a really short little story here. I haven't been able to do much storytelling. And then I realized, I'm kind of losing my stories. But this one came to mind, and maybe it's one that maybe a lot of you know. And it's about a housewife who had within her a song and a story. But she never told the story, and she never sang the song. And you know how it is, even with yourself, you get stories inside of you and they just seem to pile in there. Well, that's how it was with this woman, but she only had one song and one story, and she never told them. But the story and the song, they began to feel imprisoned in her, and they wanted out. And one day she fell asleep with her mouth wide open, and the story fell out and quickly changed itself into a coat and hung itself up on a hook by the door. And the song fell out, and very quickly it changed itself to a pair of shoes, and it snuggled under the coat. Now, the husband came in after work from the fields, and of course the first thing he saw was the coat and the shoes. Why? Wife, do we have visitors? Why no? Why would you ask? Well, whose coat is this? And whose shoes are those? Why, I'm sure I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? How did they get here? And they began to argue. And the argument escalated until the husband grabbed a blanket off of the bed and informed his wife that he was going to go to the temple, and that's where he would sleep that night. Now, it was the woman walked around the house not knowing how did this coat get here? How did these shoes, what is happening? Finally, she so fatigued, she blew out her candle and went to bed. Now, at that time and in that place, it was customary for all of the flames, after they had been blown out, to gather and go to the temple where they would gossip all night and talk. And they were all there except for this one flame who entered late. Well, where have you been? Well, you should have been at my house. My goodness, the husband and wife had such a fight. You never heard anything like it. The wife, she knows a song and she knows a story and she's never told them. So the song, to get back at her, changed itself into a coat and hung itself on a nail near the door. And the story changed itself into shoes and sat down right by the coat. And they had a terrible argument. And the husband is very suspicious of this poor innocent woman. Now, the husband, who had been sleeping on a bench right there in the temple, he heard this conversation. And as soon as the sun came out the next day, he ran home. And he said to his wife, well, wife, why didn't you tell me you had a song and a story? Tell me your song. Sing me your song. Tell me your story. And the wife, she looked at her husband. What song? What story? She had forgotten them. And so I tell you, tell your stories, sing your songs, don't forget them, and we'll see you next month. So nice to have you all with us. Thank you, all of our tellers. Thank you, all of our listeners. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Marnie. Such a wonderful night. So glad to have seen you all. Cheers. Stay healthy, everybody. Stay healthy.